It's been 25 years since Richard Daniel came home from a business trip to a quiet house in his tree-lined Rogers neighborhood. He thought his beloved wife Jane was in her dark room creating the beauty she was so very gifted at. Instead, he would discover evil had entered his home and darkness had enveloped a bright light.
She was an artist.
That's me, and my mom painted that of me.
And had great eye, you know, like an artist does. She could take a picture and she would know that that was the right one.
Jane Daniel captured moments.
I've got her all over the house.
These are the photos through which the heart of Jane Daniel continues to beat. But these are the photos that would lead police to her killer. October 12, 1990 was a bright fall day, but he had dark intentions. Entering the Daniels' home, the killer parked his car in their garage. It was full of stolen items from a neighbor, including the loaded .44 caliber Magnum revolver he would soon use to execute the 62-year-old woman who was simply grabbing a quick lunch when her life was snuffed out.
Just was a very nice woman. Really pleasant to be with, and her murder was just unbelievably cruel. But it just bothers me horribly that she must have been terrified, and she didn't deserve that at all.
For Richard Daniel, there have been many quiet moments in the last 25 years, wondering why this mother of four would be so violently taken from her family, shot at point-blank range. But Mr. Daniel does not wonder who.
My view of Don Davis is that he is an evil person who intentionally killed somebody he didn't know and who had never done any harm to him.
Prosecutors believe 27-year-old Don Davis led Jane Daniel through the house, collecting jewelry and camera items they would later recover. Then he marched her to a basement storage room and shot her, execution style, in the back of the head.
Went down into the basement level and found her laying on the floor in a pool of blood.
Oh, it was horrifying. I came driving up and there was 100 police cars. You know, I found my mom was gone.
After the murder, Don Davis bought a one-way bus ticket to Vegas, but not before tipping off his roommates that someone had been killed.
We announced a reward, and they came forward as a result of that.
Within 2 months, Don Davis was behind bars. And within 2 years, he was sentenced to death for the capital murder of Jane Daniel.
I haven't looked at this in a long time.
Time has not stopped for the Daniels family. It only feels like it.
It's as if the trial never ended. He was convicted 23 years ago and sentenced to death.
It's agony. We want an end to this, so we don't have to hear his name ever again.
Don Davis has exhausted all of his appeals. He was scheduled to die in less than 24 hours. And yet again, the family learned litigation will keep Jane Daniels' killer alive.
The case is never over. It just keeps on going and going. It sleeps a while and wakes up again, and sleeps a while and wakes up again.
For the Daniel family, it's the nightmare they cannot wake up from. They are waiting for justice.
Oh, God.
And justice hasn't come.
I mean, I would like to have this over with.
This is a long and painful journey for the family. They're waiting for justice. And tonight it feels as distant as the warm embrace of the gentle woman they loved and lost. Joanne Bauer, KNWA, Northwest Arkansas News. The family of Jane Daniel has been waiting for justice for a quarter century. We featured an in-depth story on their struggle for justice last Tuesday. You can see that on our website right now. But tonight, we go inside the mind of the man waiting to die. On October 12, 1990, as the beauty of fall was fading, Jane Daniel was in the assumed safety of her Rogers home when she was shot execution style in the back of the head. Don Davis pulled the trigger.
It bothers me horribly that she must have been terrified, and she didn't deserve that at all.
If you could say anything to Don Davis, what would it be?
Actually, there's nothing. I have nothing to say to him because he doesn't care. He doesn't have the capacity that you and I do as human beings to even understand.
Don Davis agrees. At the time he committed the murder, he didn't have the capacity to care.
What I did was an act of cowardice. It was cold-blooded. It was evil. The day I was found guilty in Bentonville, or if they would have took me out that next day and executed me, I feel as though it would have been a just execution.
But Davis maintains the evil young coward who killed Jane Daniel is not the repentant man he's become. Mr. Davis, are you sorry for what you did?
You have no idea. There is nothing in this world that I wouldn't give to change that moment. There's nothing that I can do.
Davis does not expect Jane Daniel's family to believe him. He says the state of Arkansas can't execute the man who did that crime because he no longer exists.
To stick a man in a cell for 25 years and turn him into the man that he was supposed to be in all the time, and then take him out that cell and execute him, I just have a problem with that picture, and not just because it's me.
Why should we care?
I think you should care because every human being has something to offer.
And Davis says what he has to offer is the barren reality of a life spent in a cell on death row.
My dream, what I would love to be able to do is to try to help someone see that the mistakes that I made, that the evil deeds that I did, that what I caused, all the pain and suffering, that they don't have to do that. There's a better way.
Davis believes in forgiveness, in redemption, in life after death.
The only way that I am going to ever be free is to be executed. There's a part of me that is very sad that I woke up here this morning, and then there's a part of me that is happy that I woke up here this morning because I'm alive.
That's 25 years of living that Jane Daniel didn't have.
Because of what he did, my son will never have a grandmother to come and pick him up and take him somewhere and to hug him.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry for the pain and suffering that I caused to their whole family.
And tomorrow, we explore what both opponents and proponents of Arkansas's death penalty call a broken system. Joanne Bauer, KNWA Northwest Arkansas News. There are 34 inmates on Arkansas's death row. While they wait to die, their victims' families wait for justice. Arkansas has executed 27 death row inmates since 1976, but none in the last 10 years. And tonight, the future or the end of Arkansas's death row inmates remains trapped in a limbo of litigation.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
Slowly on death row. The average length of time between the sentencing and the execution is 18 years. It's been 25 years since Don Davis murdered Jane Daniel in her Rogers home.
She was a very loving, beautiful, giving person.
2 years later, a jury convicted Davis of capital murder and sentenced him to death. That was 23 years ago.
It's as if the trial never ended. It'd be, you know.
There seems to be a rhythm to a death sentence, and for the victims' families, the rhythm is a slow and painful grind.
My concern is that I think our justice system is broken. To have the jurors' decision ignored for 23 years, I think is outrageous.
The important thing for us to do in the state of Arkansas is give meaning to jury verdicts.
But many death penalty opponents find the moral foundation of a system based on killing as a form of punishment fundamentally broken.
We believe it is wrong to kill, And so we kill in order to make the point that it's wrong to kill. I don't think that makes sense. Our system is not perfect. We can't throw that stone, that switch, those medications. It's wrong.
According to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, since 1972, 1,413 people have been executed in the United States. And during that time, 155 people were exonerated.
Oh, Lord, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord.
Found innocent and released.
That's a broken system. You can't kill people on the basis of a broken system. He who is without sin casts the first stone. This is a broken, sinful system. We don't have the right to take other lives.
Opponents maintain that racial disparity exists, and then there's the bottom line.
It's arbitrary, it's fiscally unsound. The death penalty costs about 6 times more than sentencing someone to die in prison. That's life without parole.
Even those who work to uphold, to implement, and to carry out the death penalty call it a broken system.
I fault the system.
Earlier this year, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson scheduled the executions of 8 men, and he says setting those dates triggered legal reviews.
But it all really depends upon the courts, and this is where you have judges that understand their role and they apply the law as well as the Constitution. So my responsibility is all I can control, and if I do not set a date, if I do not carry out my responsibility, then I can't expect someone else to do theirs either.
One of the men set to die on October 21st, Don Davis. It was the 5th time he would hold his breath as he was told the day and hour that he would die. It was the 5th time he would live to exhale.
It's not easy preparing to die. I've been through it so much. You know, I've been locked up so long, I think it's the only way I'm going to be able to live is to die.
But for the family of Jane Daniel, her killer's death sentence has become a life sentence of waiting.
It's agony. We want an end to this.
The case is never over. It just keeps on going and going.
We have a cottage industry of attorneys who are dedicated to making the death penalty as arduous, as drawn out as humanly possible.
The litigation and the protests and the work that abolitionists do is because they have a belief that every life matters.
We need to protect society from the pathological. But when we begin to act like the pathological, when we intentionally, willfully kill people who are under our control, I think that's something dangerous to our corporate soul.
Well, the one thing that both opponents and proponents of Arkansas's death sentence do agree on is that this is a broken system.